More than 250,000 people bid farewell to Pope Francis on Saturday at St. Peter's Square.
Amongst those who were in attendance, South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds. Grant Green spoke with Senator Rounds about his trip to Rome and what the Pope meant to him. Grant.
Good evening, Brian and Andrea. Yeah, Pope Francis was a pope very much identified with the values of inclusion and acceptance, and something Rounds says that not only resonated with him as an individual, but those are values as a representative of an American citizen.
Senator Mike Rounds was one of 5 Catholic senators to attend the funeral, along with some representatives and leaders from 130 countries. Rounds said it was great to see the influence Pope Francis had on people around the world, as seen by the scale of the event. The 266th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church had a strong influence, especially on those who are not Catholic.
His sense that he was not there to judge other people personally. He was there to help them in their spiritual life. And as he made it very clear, the church is for everyone.
Pope Francis was a strong advocate for open immigration policies, something the Republican Party has clashed with him on. Rounds says he was always considerate of what the Pope asked for.
But you have to temper that with the fact that all countries have a responsibility to be able to protect their borders and to have an organized effort to allow for legal immigration to occur.
Pope Francis was the first pope born in South America. He was born in Argentina to Italian immigrant parents.
And now the Catholic Cardinals begin the search for a new pope. That search begins May 7th when the conclave votes one in. Brian.
All right, Grant, thank you.